There we are. It worked. Now, before the show, we were talking about your UAD a little bit, and I don't wanna break the fourth wall too much here, but we finally hit the point where I have to, like, go in and turn off SIP, I think, and a whole bunch of stuff just to make my UAD box work, and I think, and I hate to say this, I think I'm
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
stop updating my laptop, which is awful. Like, I'll put it offline, security folks in the chat, but, like, I have noticed, unfortunately, for software audio kind of stuff, you do eventually reach a point where it's just safer to, like, buy a new device, buy new hard like, move on, essentially. And the
Mhm.
extension for the UAD stuff has unfortunately become a problem where, specifically, it's supposed to pop up like a security thing saying "allow" on my end, and it just doesn't pop up. And because it won't pop up, I
Oh,
can't use it, which is not great.
right.
So right
Well,
now
it
Yeah, go
pops
ahead.
up the first time you do it for, like,
Yeah,
20
30
minutes, and
minutes.
then
Yeah.
then you're never gonna see it again.
So I did like a fresh install, wiped all the press, did again. Yeah, no good.
Yep.
Rebooted into a different operating system and it worked, which is cool, but it's also like
Mhm.
an older operating system, which
Right.
yeah. I am one of the few
Well
who like dual boots Mac operating systems to make sure the
oh,
new
yeah?
ones get, but I knew as soon as they said they were
Mm.
removing Kex because I use a Japanese Bluetooth keyboard and I require a Kex, sorry, that's a kernel extension to use some of the keys on
Mm.
it. And I knew
Mhm.
this is going to be a problem going into it, but the Happy Hacking Keyboard Bluetooth Professional Silent requires a kernel extension too. So it's kind of like what would this be? Like a Linux kernel module, I guess. Apple's essentially saying that it's
Mm.
harder and harder for devs to use this. But
Yeah.
I do have a segue. So I've got this all thought out. I'm getting really good at this job, let me tell you. We'll have sponsors in no time. So the software experience of this hardware makes me either want to buy new hardware or different hardware. When I
Yeah.
look at the Apple Vision Pro, I feel like the hardware is the problem, but increasingly when I read the reviews, the software is actually what shines, and that the hardware is going to have to play catch up essentially to the software. So it's kind of
Right.
like that opposite problem. And I don't know if you've been
Mm.
seeing the same, but increasingly I'm seeing people like the return YouTube kind of people, whatever, but the people who are in tech talking about this intelligently, I think are picking up on something is that some of these paradigms in the software, like being able to drop a timer on things in your kitchen or like leave
Mm.
a display open at your desk while you go
Mhm.
somewhere else while still wearing the headset and come back and the work's still there. That virtual augmented reality, that AX or AR kind of aspect, I think is here to stay, which is
Mhm.
it's kinda interesting. It's like we're talking about computers of the future, basically. So I sent you an article that
Right.
obviously talks about this being the computer of the future. I'm not convinced, but I do feel like
Mhm.
those virtual displays that are kinda around and you don't necessarily need too bulky a hardware or
Mhm.
even glasses or maybe contacts or something. I feel like that's where we're at. If we can remove that barrier to entry on the hardware side, will be in the space that UAD's in. Like everybody understands it's a box. You plug in a mic and it's got a knob to turn up the volume. Like people get this. I don't
Right.
think people get the Apple Vision Pro hardware yet. What are your thoughts here? I don't think I'm being like a hot take, uh, knee jerk reaction
Yeah,
here or
I don't
anything.
know. I mean, I still haven't played with it. I have no idea. I mean, I've seen what other people, other people's videos of it.
Well, we gotta
It
take a road trip and take you into the Apple Center in Seattle
I
and
think
yeah,
so. I mean, the closest Apple store is, I guess it's 20 miles away, if that, probably 10 miles away,
just on the
but
shore.
it is 2 hours away
Right.
because I have to cross most of that over the water, and I have to wait for ferries, and so so it's hard to get to. Um, and so yeah, I just haven't. I mean, can you try them?
Yeah. I will say you get
Oh yeah.
some schmutz or something on shirt there. Sorry. I forget to point it out for those, viewers who are watching us. We get, like, people in the chat again, so, maybe I'll
I
say hi to
know this
Endo
is
when he
so
says
weird.
it is very odd. They're all here
Um,
to hear about your opinions on
it
the
was
Apple
so
headset, but
much different. It was when it was only your mother in there.
right? Different vibe for sure.
Different vibe.
But
Yeah, somebody actually
yeah.
responded to one of my videos saying, you need AI to look at your shirt for the gunk that's on your. Because I've done plenty of
Oh, it's happened
videos where
before?
there's something there, or I did a video of a keyboard,
Yeah.
and people were like, "Clean your keyboard. It's disgusting." It's like
Oh,
keyboards
yeah, it's
are not supposed to be
unfortunately
clean.
yeah, I know also when you're looking at a keyboard close, like, there's stuff on there that you might not see to your naked eye, unfortunately,
Yeah,
like, the amount of
yeah,
dust that is along the edges that you're not touching, I noticed
right,
that a lot when I was doing keyboard stuff,
yeah.
but yeah, it's hard taking keyboard pictures.
Mm,
But that hardware I'm not done with this, that hardware, the keyboard,
yeah,
you understand. The software is a given.
mhm.
When does the headset become the keyboard? Like, that interface to the computer? Is it 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? Are we already there? It feels like we're not already there.
I mean we have the same kind of, you talked about, having the dial on the audio interface, and you kinda
Yes.
wanna go to that, and you have the same problem in cars, where there are, do manufacturers put more of the functionality into the UI?
Right.
Um,
And less physical dust?
a year ago or so, Tony and I were looking at getting a new car, and one of the cars that we considered was the Taycan. And you've got this massive strip of monitor space,
Right.
and most of the reviews I've seen is like, well, the car's amazing, but the entertainment system slash UI slash all this is horrible and makes it hard to own the car.
Wow.
It's probably changed since then, but um, having you kind of need to have more physical buttons, and um, there's on our Volvo
Mhm.
XC40, there's a physical button to change the drive mode, and I
Right.
find myself using that. That's probably one of the more accessed features, because it is a physical button that I can tap
Right.
to go to individual, which is like it becomes really quite powerful machine,
Like
and then go
real
back to
all-wheel
eco
drive,
where
right?
it's yeah, oh yeah, all-wheel
Yeah.
drive, fast,
Yeah.
super fast pickup, and yeah, and there's so many other controls that are only in the UI,
Mhm.
and it's a really cool UI, but hasn't changed in the 4 years since we've owned it, and it's just, hard to get to, hard to click, 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 click to get to the UI.
I hear you.
Um,
I've got that same
and,
problem with, like, this
if
Go
well,
ahead.
if the Apple,
Vision Pro?
display thing, what's
Mhm.
it called?
Vision Pro.
Vision Pro, yeah.
It could
If
just
that
be
thing
Vision Pro.
if it if it had, well, you don't wanna have, like, all the controls as, like, buttons in
No,
the
no, no.
display, because then you'd have,
No,
like,
yes, I do.
1,000
No,
buttons.
yes, I want 1,000 rotary
Oh, you wanna
encoders
have,
where
like, a keyboard right here?
Yeah, exactly. But I hear you. I do like physical buttons, and I was reaching around just to grab this one that I've got, but I bought one of those old I think they're Mac Ally,
Mm,
kinda do you remember these?
mhm,
But I do actually
yeah,
really like the tactic feel of
yeah,
rotary encoders, basically, and they're becoming
yeah,
more and more popular on keyboards as well, and I think cars used to have, like, volume knobs and stuff like that. What I really don't
mhm,
like is like, yeah, that I guess maybe it's Tesla's what I've got in my mind, but being able to or having to go into menus to do things that you would assume
mhm,
you should have some sort of physical access to. I get that they're
yeah,
trying to not break doorknobs or, like, rotary encoders, like,
right,
the less
right,
moving parts, the better. However, I really do feel like physical buttons do have a place. There's something in my mind more accessible about physical buttons, and I
right,
guess to your point, like, the vision is in it's the polar opposite of this. It's like, what if there were no buttons? Then
right,
what? What if you were the button and this is kind of the thing.
yep. Yeah, I mean,
I
I have,
yeah.
this is a keyboard that I keep on the side of my
Mhm.
machine, which, it's a lot of, buttons to click, and so I
Right.
keep this on my left hand,
Mhm.
and so, I've got basically JKL
Right.
for moving around the timeline, and Blade right there. I mean, like, really quick and easy, trim to end, trim to beginning, and, a lot of different controls, but then it's also got a rotary for I
Right.
use that for moving around the timeline, and then
Oh, like
tap,
scrubbing? Yep.
and, it will if I tap it in, it'll then zoom in and out, and the
Mhm.
tap again, go back to the first layer, and then this one for going up and down, to additional storylines on the timeline.
Yeah,
Um,
and
and
what you're
that's
touching on there is, like, those motions, right? Like, that's a
yeah,
different thing too. Yeah.
yeah, and it would be Yeah. So I can, but of course I could do all that on the keyboard, but I make it difficult for myself by having a different keyboard layout. So I have to. Well, that's just
No,
another
no,
problem.
I hear you. I hear you. I do. One of the things I really liked about the iPhone, as someone who kind of goes between languages, I speak English and French. I pretend to know Japanese, though. Like honestly, it needs to get better. What I really, especially English French, like that keyboard is different. So there's AZERTY
Yeah.
instead of QWERTY. Like it's completely different
Right.
layout. And when you
Right.
get into the accents, is where it really becomes difficult on a
Mm,
mobile keyboard. And the fact that it's mobile and can change is amazing. The fact
right.
that I've essentially got 3 keyboards on my mobile phone is
Hmm.
amazing to me. At
Yeah.
home, I use a Japanese keyboard because I don't type that much French on like on my computer.
Hmm.
But if I had to, it would be very difficult with this keyboard.
Mm,
Typing English and Japanese, no problem. But trilingual or plus plus
right.
becomes more and more popular. Or sorry, more
Yeah.
and more difficult. And what I'd like to see more popular is these kind of virtual keyboards that allow you to type. The rub here, of
Mhm.
course, is that the keyboard in the Apple Vision Pro is apparently universally hated. It's quite bad. The
Mm,
easiest way to type on it is to speak, and we've discussed the issues about, "Yeah, let's talk about
right.
Kubernetes with Apple." It just doesn't work, kind of thing. That
Right.
dictionary that they've got isn't adapted to much that I could use
Well,
it for.
the keyboard. I mean, I would imagine probably the biggest problem with the keyboard is that you don't have anything holding you to any one place in
Yeah,
space, and so how do you know where to?
yeah, and
How
you
do
gotta
you know
do
where to
like
go?
this.
Yeah, it's like where's the Q button or and so I feel like you can't get away from a physical keyboard if you're using your fingers to, and that's where the voice does come in. And I just
Right.
recently, just in the last like 2 days, returned on the Apple dictation.
Yeah, that's what I'm
For
talking about. I actually do use it quite a
yeah,
bit. Yeah.
I'm and it's great. I've forgotten how good it
It
was. As long as you're not doing like long things.
long is okay.
Um,
Tech things is my issue. It can certainly do long.
Like for bringing up a keyboard shortcut to bring
Mhm.
up like the enter a task. I
Right,
use a tool called Akiflow,
right.
and um, I have a keyboard shortcut to bring up the little kind of task manager or the task the bar to say what do I want to remember to do, and I just have I think I ended up setting up a macro, so I just hit one thing and it automatically starts the dictation. And so I just say it and I press enter and dictation stops and
Mm.
my task gets in there. And usually the task isn't so much tech stuff as like remember to buy milk or whatever the task is.
Right.
It's not going to be I'm not going to go into super high detail about make sure I add, the line 4 of the Kubernetes manifest, to add this
Manifest.yaml,
connection.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm not gonna go
Start
into
with
that much
4
detail.
non-printing spaces. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I I think it's at the point now where I think it could be able to do that kind of stuff, but it is pretty difficult. Like even the tone, I often add exclamation points to the end of sentences
Yeah,
just to, I don't know, sound friendly or be excited, but it still can't understand the intonation or the difference in intonation. When I
yeah,
say, I won't say the keyword here, but when I say the word and then say some things, it doesn't understand that I'm excited, or maybe it does and it ignores it because it can't tell reliably. But I do often find myself sort of spelling out the punctuation, which is the problem. But
right.
it's not that bad
I
as long as you're watching it.
That said, I don't know where I saw this, but in the last 2 days or so,
Mhm.
some report saying that there would be an update to dictation and Siri in
Oh,
the next like, maybe announced at the next event, which is apparently March,
right.
early March.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so and because they've been a lot of the hot AI
Mhm,
stories have been coming out of Apple
mhm.
for the last few weeks, about MXL or MXS,
Yep.
something like that. And so that would be amazing. Now, it could be totally bogus and none of it, I mean, because you never know with Apple rumors.
I didn't have this on my bingo card for today, but I really would like to dig into, like, the virtual assistants not really being helpful and Amazon
Mhm,
kinda, like, shilling ads and telling me my batteries are dead and trying to sell me a
mhm. Yeah.
$30,000 3-volt battery. It was ridiculous. It did it for weeks, and I couldn't get it to stop. It was like the
Really?
one recommended on Amazon Shopping is it was like a $30,000 battery. It's like, how did you find
Oh my
this?
god.
Just to replace like a Philips Hue up and down kind of thing.
Mm,
But I would like, the series, the Googles, the Apple, sorry, the Amazons of the world to get better voice assistants because I already use it like a third hand basically. So like set a timer,
yeah,
tell me the weather, that kind of
yeah,
stuff. Like I've got a routine already. You can kind of see them
yeah,
in the background there. I've got two of them, but like I need to get rid of like I don't need three voice assistants. One tells me about my
yeah,
packages. The other one can reliably play music. And yeah, the thumbs up, of course. And then I
yeah.
use the Siri one for everything else.
Yeah. I use the Amazon one for timers mostly in the kitchen.
Yeah, yeah.
And then oh, and then that made this horrible change. I don't know what happened, but the language that I used to like work with it changed at some point, and so I
Oh, no.
couldn't reliably use it. So I would always say, you're at one of the things in at breakfast time we have oatmeal, and so our recipe for oatmeal is, 1 part oatmeal, 1 part water, and a little bit of salt,
Oh,
and bring that up to the boil, and then keep it at a simmer for 5 minutes, and then cover and turn it off for 5 minutes. So there's two 5 minute timers I need to set.
yep.
I say, Alexis, or sorry, Amazon Assistant,
Thing. Yeah.
turn on, set a 5 minute timer. Okay,
Right.
great. And then, 4 minutes or 3 or 4 minutes long. It's like, it's got to be time by now. Like, what? And I will say, hmm, what are my timers? And this has always worked in the past, and it
Right.
would list through.
Right.
There's a
I
5 minute
have the
timer
same
that's
problem.
got 2 minutes
Yeah.
left, and there's a whatever minute timer that's got 1 minute left. And now, instead of saying, here's this list of timers, it says, your 5 minutes timer restarted. You go, what? No, 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 no,
It's
no,
the
no, no,
last
go
thing
back,
I
go back,
wanted.
go back.
Yeah. How much time was left? I don't know.
Am I 30
Just
seconds
ruined the
from being
oatmeal.
done? Or yeah, I mean, and if you don't get that, I mean, the second timer doesn't really matter, but the first one, it matters a lot.
I will say in a,
Yeah,
a house with no real rooms, I've got a tiny little office, but we've got two of the G Suite appliances,
oh
and they
yeah,
will often like the wrong one will often answer because
hmm,
it thinks my voice is louder somehow to that one than
yeah,
the other. Because the ceiling's
yeah,
pretty tall and I don't know, maybe it's reverberating or what have
yeah,
you, but it's quite annoying. And it can't figure out which is which. And it'll often like I'll talk
yeah,
to one and we'll stop the music on like it's totally
yeah,
messed up. At least they know that they're both in the same household, but having two within earshot of each other is bad. And I put
yep.
them close together, like the A1 and the G1 close together. So and sometimes they talk to each other, which is amazing. It's rare. It's rare. I'm sure they like recognize the other voice, so it doesn't happen,
Yeah,
but it does happen. It's kind of
yeah,
funny. But I'd love to have two LLMs from two different companies have a conversation in
yeah.
my own home and
Well,
not obviously not foot the token bill. They can handle that.
yeah. Well, that is something that's offered by these agent systems.
Oh,
So
yeah,
having different LLMs or different models, or even just different models in Olama sense, where there's a model
right.
would be defined by the system prompt and template. So different ones of those talking to each other to try to come up with a better answer.
I like that.
And so there's a system from Microsoft, AutoGen,
Yep,
and then there's another one, Crew AI,
right.
and what's the other one that I really want to start playing with? Model Fusion,
Oh,
which
I
is
haven't heard
basically
that
the
one.
same thing, but more of a TypeScript focused one.
Interesting.
So better. Uh,
Now, is this a system of experts kind of system? Like if an expert
no,
system is infinite ifs, that this isn't that? Okay.
this isn't that. It's not one model with all the things in it, but rather you would set up different models to kind of react to each other,
Mm,
um, based on, say that one is a product manager and one is something else in a product development life cycle, and they would go back and forth against each other and up to like maybe 5 times, and then what is the answer? Or another one is, come up with a travel itinerary, and so you've got one model that's really good at just figuring out, here's generally the city
mm.
you should go to, and another one that
Yeah.
knows about that city, and okay, here's some of the sites. Oh, well, about, let's go ahead and call a task, call a function that gets the flight information
Mhm.
for possible flights. So here's the places you can go to that will cost under $1,000, and here's some of the things that you can do.
Mhm. I will
Um,
say I was trying to steer you toward a question in the chat, which you almost
yeah,
answered. I thought we could get you there, but
so
I
so that's
think
a completely different
I
question.
thought so.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like,
yeah,
"Hey, I wanna run 2 things at the same time with 2 GPUs." I was thinking
right.
containerization and assigning, like, a PCIe device to it, but I don't know if
So
that's the best way to do it.
so the quick first answer is, I mean, if we're talking about Olama, what I
Mhm.
assume we are,
Yep, we are.
then Olama only knows about one model at a time. It cannot do two
Right.
models at a time. There's no
Right.
way to do two models at a time for a single Olama instance. Um, but there was a kind of a popular YouTuber
Mhm.
that said, "Oh my God, this is amazing because it's like loading two models at the same time." Well, he was using two small models, and so the time between requests was really really small, and it was able to load that model super fast. But he
Oh.
was just he was
Hmm.
confused. It looks like it's running multiple models, but that said. Um, there have been some folks on the Discord, on the Olama Discord, talking about how to run different Olama instances on different ports, and Olama doesn't seem to care about it being run multiple times as multiple services.
Right.
Um, but 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 then you're going to run into problems,
Mhm.
probably. It's depending on how big your model is. If the model is big enough to consume a lot of memory
Right.
on the GPU, then the other model is going to try to clobber that, and you're going to get into weird
Yeah,
issues
yeah.
there.
That's in
Um,
my brain, I was thinking this is a 2 computer problem, so how do I take 1
right,
computer and make it into 2? So I was thinking,
right.
like, containers, VMs, something like that, but I don't know if that's possible.
And well, yeah, there's that. So on Mac, as doing containers don't pull through the GPU on Mac.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
They
good
do
for me.
on Windows and Linux, but you can't get access to the GPU on
Wow.
Mac. Um, but um, but then
Oh,
the
actually,
GPU.
if we're saying 3090, we know this is Linux actually, because Apple hasn't supported NVIDIA since the 10,000 or the
Sure,
1000 series.
yeah,
So it's Linux or Windows, but I
right,
think Windows
right.
is Windows not brand new, for Olama, like Friday?
Yeah, last week, yeah, sometime.
Okay, that's what I thought.
It might have been Friday, yeah.
I saw it somehow
No, it
like
was
listed.
Thursday. It was Thursday. It
Okay,
was.
I followed the release notes, unfortunately, and I get
Mm,
so much spam from Olama. The project is very
yeah,
popular, so I get a lot of them.
yeah,
And when I saw Windows come through, I
yeah,
was like, "Oh, this is pretty interesting. I should try this
yeah.
out."
So the 3090s. So with any two of anything, one of the
Right.
problem sort of problems right now is if you have, let's say, I don't know how much memory is on the 3090. I don't know. I'm
24
gonna
if memory
assume
serves. I've got 3 of them.
24.
Don't tell anybody. Yeah.
Here's my address. You can send one to me. Except I don't have a machine that I can.
How do you not have a machine with PCIe? You get Thunderbolt machines. You can do external graphics
I
cards.
I only
Oh,
have
oh, the
M1s.
gears are the gears are turning. You can do it that way.
Oh,
Yeah, but you'd have to boot into Linux with like a
yeah.
Asahi or something. Yeah,
I mean, I do have two ancient Intel. Actually, I have three Intel
there you go.
machines.
There you go.
Um, but anyway, so if you've got a 7B model
Mhm.
in Olama, and you've got a single external or a single GPU, and let's say it's 24 gigs. Okay, great. Um, so the model is going to be loaded into there, and it'll run at a certain speed. If you have two of those cards,
Mhm.
the model kind of splits across both of them.
Yeah, that's what he's saying he
Um,
doesn't want to do.
and so uh, two GPUs on the same machine, if the model fits into one, then having two GPUs means the model is going to run a lot slower.
Ah,
Three GPUs, it's going to be even slower. Right
gotcha.
now, Olama doesn't have a way of saying only for this instance, only look at one
Mhm.
GPU. Um, it has to kind of spread it out
Right.
because it's
Now
not that. Yeah.
In hardware, you can do SLI, but I feel
Mhm.
I really
Yeah.
want to say to Knox the Bunker, SLI is dead. Please don't look at this. It's going to be so slow for the 3090. You're going to lose a lot, way
Mm.
more than any Olama overhead. Yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
like a feature request. I
Yeah,
would
I think
say if you're on Ubuntu, I would say try containerizing Olama. It might be faster than you think with something like LXD or Docker. I don't
but the
know. I've been
problem
impressed
still oh, so
because
in
they're two
Docker, I
different
guess
GPUs.
you
The
could
GPU.
say, "Only look at this GPU." Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
think. Or VM, but a VM is
yeah,
gonna be a lot overhead. Honestly, you're mostly using the
yeah.
GPU, but Llama does use CPU and memory as well, so yeah,
Yeah.
and pass one GPU. Again, would
Hmm,
love to hear if this works because I can try it on my end as
yeah.
well. I've only got one GPU in each of 3 workstations, so if this works for you, I could start consolidating workstations, and other people in the household will be happy because I've got 4 of them now.
Yeah, I definitely don't have another, I mean, it would be great to have a machine that all my Macs are being used for things, so I can't, like, turn it into something else. That said, I've got things like this thing, this B-Link that I still haven't
Yeah.
really used. I
No
bought it
way! I
ages
hear they're
ago.
really good.
They are really good. Um, I think, this even it might have even come with Windows, I think.
Oh,
Anyway,
one last point of precision for Nox and
yeah,
Bunker. I think what we're saying is 2 containers, not just 1. You'll actually have to split both out because the other
yeah,
one will still see both. And I think in Linux,
mhm,
you actually have to have a mask saying like the OS cannot touch this GPU. So in reality, you actually kind of need 3 GPUs, assuming you've got one on board. So what you do is the onboard
mhm,
one is your display. Maybe you turn that off because you're using web, doesn't matter. The other 2, though, can't be used by the operating system. You have to pass the entire GPU, unfortunately.
mm,
And again, that's as far as I know. I don't know if there's another way around it, but you have to mask it out from the OS and put it into the container, unfortunately.
hmm.
But that's works for me on like Proxmox, so I'm assuming it will work for you. But I'd really like to hear back, so let me know.
Yeah. So, huh, that's a good idea. Use this thing, huh.
Heck yeah!
Because
And
do, like, eGPU boxes
Yeah, I
cost?
think it's got Oculink, I think is what that one has, right? Or is that the Minis Forum one? But I think it's actually got like a 32 gigabits a second connector on the back of it, which is pretty
No,
sweet. No, no
this
good. So I think that's the state of the art right now is Oculink. And Oculink, I
okay.
thought was made for inside a server chassis, so it's not supposed to be used externally. So those cables are costly, short,
Mm,
and flimsy would be my only caution there. But you
mm,
should be able to do like a full PCIe 4, PCIe 5 bandwidth on it, which is nice. So the
yeah,
Minis Forum one has an Oculink connector. I think the adapters are, I want to say $20-$30 on Amazon, like really, really cheap. And the reason
right.
they're cheap, and this is kind of like a sad benefit, but remember all those people who were buying GPUs to make some, I don't know, Bitcoin or something? There's a lot of these, like all the accessories around PCIe extension and
Right,
cables and things like that that used to be very expensive are now dirt cheap, which is awesome. So you can go
right.
out and get like the power adapter, the cables, everything for about $40. I was looking for
Hmm,
one for my Asus, which is also has headless, because you can put a GPU
mm.
in an M2 slot, for example. So you can put
Oh, okay.
M2 in and G2 out, and sorry, GPU out, and it might look awful, like it might be a cable
Right.
coming out of a laptop or a case or something like that, but you certainly can do it.
Wow. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's
so
all
sweet.
an area I've not looked at all because I've
I
all been,
no, on the
M1s
cloud.
and
Yeah,
so forth,
yeah, that too.
Macs. Yeah.
Yeah. I've broken someone's brain here. I will say, listen, I am not the expert in this. I got most of this from Wendell at Level One Techs, who is a bit of an experimenter, let's say, in terms of PCIe
Mm, yeah.
extension. But if you do need to get more PCIe, Oculink's the way to do it. Internally, M2 is the way to do it. But otherwise, I think you've got a different problem here with the containerization. But it is interesting to me in terms of the way people are starting to use. So I mentioned mixture of experts, but it seems like what we're talking about in the chat is like do one thing and not agentic, which I think is what you're talking about. Like the agent should know to call the other one and do it, but maybe pulling up like a pipeline locally and then doing multiple things at once. And I think the issue is that the unload reload is what people are realizing is that it's non-trivial actually to put all of this into GPU memory. At some of these models are quite large, right? So trying to throw 20 gigabytes of memory onto HBM5 can take some time to read from disk. Yes, M2 PCIe adapter definitely exists. The other thing that came in here, I don't want to over rotate on AI this week, but it seemed like there was a lot of news. The first one was like OpenAI seems like it's worth over $80 billion now based on their most recent valuation. Which, are we in pet rock territory here? Is OpenAI worth that much? That's a
So,
large market cap.
I mean, what's Datadog now? 60 billion.
Let's say over 50 is the last time I
Yeah,
checked.
and to say that, I don't know, Datadog's got a lot of
Right,
value out there. So
right. I think
I don't
at
know.
that valuation, you would have to be touching the lives of like everyday people. I think once you're getting close to 100
Yeah,
billion, like these are normal. This is beyond the like developer market cap, basically. So once you're outside of that use case, it has to be regular people,
right.
and
And
that's
so
kind of
that's
amazing.
like what, a tenth? I guess it's about a tenth the size of Microsoft.
Yeah, yeah. And in
Um,
terms of funding, like generally it's 10x or 100x these days. So you would assume that they've
mhm.
gotten close to 8 billion in funding. Is that possible?
Do they make a
Again,
profit?
I don't know. I have no idea. One would
Because I seem to
assume so.
remember at one point it was like
Mhm.
$750,000 a day to run
Right,
ChatGPT,
right.
just to run it. And then, I mean, they've got a lot of people that are subscribing, paying $20 a month.
Yep,
I think I'm still paying $20 a month for
as am I.
ChatGPT.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of us paying, so
There
maybe
are.
that covers it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really tough call. The other
Yeah.
kind of related to that was they've tried, I think this is the second time, if not the third, they've tried to patent GPT at the US Patent Office and have
Mm,
failed. So I think what they're
mhm.
trying to do is kind of like make this a tool thing. I listen, a GPT to me is something that is at the beginning of a hard drive and tells you how it's going to like master boot record versus GPT. So
Yeah,
for me,
yeah, yeah.
it's a little bit confusing because I've used to be a storage person, so that's in my brain all the
Mhm.
time. So when I see GPT out of context, I think hard drives. Unfortunately,
Right.
I realize I'm a minority. I think most people would assume GPT has something to do with Chat GPT when they see it, especially since they're talking about GPTs that you can use as like a unit.
Right.
What do you think? Should this be
I
trademarkable?
don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's possible. I mean, uh, I don't think anybody would assume that all government employees are the
Mhm.
most technically savvy, and so maybe they just misunderstood the application, and
Maybe the first time. I
um,
think the second time, based on the notes that I read, it seems like they were pretty
yeah,
clear, and their argument was like basically it's just too wide reaching. It's like this
mm,
could be an
yeah,
industry term now, basically, is what they're saying. The cat's out of the
right,
bag.
yeah.
It's too
You
common. You
you
can't just
you should have done
trademark it.
this a few years ago, and it's too late now.
It pretty much, yeah. Like,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
can you claim prior art? No. Well,
right.
moving on. Uh, oh, get
Hmm,
another person joining. Wow, from Twitter. Okay, so we got Twitter, YouTube,
yeah,
and Twitch today. Excellent.
wow.
Look at this.
Um,
Oh, did
yeah,
we go
this
on
is.
LinkedIn? Shoot, because
I, this is.
LinkedIn's bopping.
I know this person personally.
There you go. Amazing.
Do you know Stephanie?
I do not,
Oh,
unfortunately. Sorry,
she
Stephanie.
would be she would have left Datadog long before you ever started.
Oh, got you. I started in 2020.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hello, Stephanie.
Yeah. And then the last one about kind of funding and stuff like that is LangChain landed 20 million in funding. And again, this seems small, but
Hmm.
I think LangChain's kind of one of those tools that like what's the other one? Llama Index, LangChain, the sort of tooling that you use within this sort of research, I think is pretty interesting. So I like to see when the kind of also ran little tools and stuff are getting funding as
Right.
well. That's pretty awesome. But yeah, I agree. It's not a lot of money. It's also a tool that seems to be not as used these days. I don't know. What are you seeing
Right.
out there? Is LangChain still the king? I see a lot more Llama Index content. That's
Oh,
all.
really?
Yes,
Oh, interesting. I do
absolutely.
definitely do not see that. But uh, I think a lot of people start to use tools like LangChain and Llama Index before it's really needed, and so both of those tools will add complexity where you don't need the complexity. You know, for
Yeah.
if you're just doing a simple RAG solution, you don't need that. But if you're going to go into more depth, yes, I mean those tools offer a lot to simplify a really complicated system. But it's it's most people bring it in too early and just assume, well, they're going to get really big and then never do because it's complicated.
I'm laughing
And
because it
then
feels like me with service meshes on Kubernetes, where like day one, let's
yeah,
put Istio
yeah,
on this. It's kind of like okay, it kind of feels like that.
and then and then where was I going to go with that next? Yeah, there are certain things that some of those frameworks on top of something like Olama,
Hmm.
they made certain assumptions early on about that Olama worked the same way as, say, an OpenAI, and so therefore
Oh,
they made assumptions which were kind of wrong, and
gotcha.
but are kind of stuck with them. Um, but I haven't really looked into those two. There was another one as well in some time. I mean, I've got a tutorial on my YouTube channel, which is 5 months
Ancient,
old, so like ancient.
ancient.
And I think most of the libraries that I refer to have been deprecated long ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so they're yeah. But 20 million, yeah. I would think that they could because they've got LangChain's got LangGraph and Lang whatever the Watcher tool that kind of is a
Right,
back end debugger. I can't
right.
remember what it's called, but um, all those tools. I would think that they are worth
Langsmith, is that
Langsmith.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Langsmith.
I thought
Yeah.
Langsmith was the
Okay.
one for building models. I can't remember. I need to use it obviously, which I have not done.
Yeah. Um, I think uh, I would imagine that they're taking 20 million on a much they're for a smaller piece. And
Right,
so I mean this is a totally different topic, but
right,
companies will take just because they one company takes 1 million, maybe they don't want to give up as much of the company. Um and other companies have taken 20, 30, 40 million. And I mean I was at Datadog when Datadog kept bringing in more and more cash just to really just have cash available to acquire
right.
a few other companies.
And I think when you're operating a service like that, especially when you're talking about
Mhm,
losses, it becomes more important. But I think early on in OpenAI's history, they partnered with Microsoft, and it's probably a good move, like
mhm,
Microsoft, Google, what have you. I think understanding that you're going to have a hardware issue down the line,
right.
ergo, let's find a hardware vendor that we can partner with was pretty smart. I
Yeah.
don't think they gave up 50% of their company, but my understanding was like a significant portion was given to Microsoft.
Mm.
Was it like a controlling interest? But it was like a
Oh,
fair
yeah.
amount, right?
Yeah.
So like we're talking about like technology partner or technology investor, tech investor, like something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the, uh somebody else I've known who, did, fund his company, said that, the most important part of getting any sort of funding,
Mhm.
whether it's a seed round or Series A, isn't so much the money. The money doesn't really matter. It's the advice of that person.
Oh,
And
wow.
and
Okay.
so when they were going around to different investors
Right.
to talk about, trying to throw money at the company very recently, um, they said no to a lot because they didn't agree with the advice that they were being given based on advice they gotten from other companies, and or
Gotcha.
the company just wanted to throw money, $20 million at the company, saying, "You do whatever you want to do." It's like, no, 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 no. We want if you're giving us money, we're expecting you to give us advice on what to do, how we can make things better because you've done this before. So how can we be better and be amazing?
Right. Now, have you ever heard of and this is like a super deep cut. Have you ever heard of Constellation International? Constellation Software International?
No.
Does that ring a bell to you
I
at
was
all?
thinking it was like an airline. No, Constellation International.
I
No.
believe their valuation is 80 billion, but the last thing you said there, and I went looking into this, trying to figure out like the founder looks like Rick Rubin, so I was immediately interested. Also, they're Canadian, in a similar area to where Olama was founded.
Hmm.
And I looked into them more, and their business idea, get this, is to sink a bunch of money into software companies and let them do their thing, and then just like
Hmm.
wait it out. Like, I like your idea, I like where you're going.
Right.
You don't have a runway.
Right.
We'll give you that. With a
Right.
controlling interest in the company, we'll bring you into the
Yeah.
fold, and then we'll let you run for years and
Right.
years and years. It's
Yeah.
amazing. I never thought that kind of
Yeah.
business model existed, but yeah, you touched on something that was new to me.
And
I
I think
didn't
there are some
realize.
companies that that's all
Yeah,
they want is just, yeah, give
so
me.
cool.
I want to play around with this idea. Give me lots of
Yeah,
money to let me play around, and don't give me any pushback. Like,
that's
yeah,
amazing.
I think there's a lot of companies that just want that, and that way they can be a cool software developer and maybe buy an extra yacht, and and just have fun. Or do you want to build a company that really becomes something?
Right. So I found this looking at, like, I think it was top 20 tech stocks by market cap, essentially, just trying to figure out like
Mm,
the who's who, and they were in there. So I started digging and
mm,
and, and got more and more information about them. But yeah,
wow.
very very interesting stuff. I think they're more of like a venture capital holding company, that kind of thing. Yeah, there's something in the comments like you could just IPO. I mean, there are other things about IPOing and becoming a
But
publicly traded
IPO takes a
company.
long time. I mean, from the
They
time I started,
is it 10 years?
when I started at Datadog, Datadog had already been around for 2, 3 years, with
Right,
the initial like year where it was just
right.
Alexi and Ollie sitting at a shared table with uh, two other founders of a company that they later acquired. Um, but they had already been around for 2 or 3 years. I joined, and then it was another 6 years before
Mhm.
Datadog went public. By which time I think when they went public, they were probably what, 600, 700 people within a
Maybe
couple,
less,
or
like
maybe a
500.
thousand.
Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah.
I got hired before we went public, but I
Mm,
started just after we got public, and yeah, it was quite small. We've
mm.
grown a lot in the past 4 years.
And then when I left about 2 years later, we were 4,000, and I would imagine it's much bigger now.
I think we're
And it's
we're
a
over
company that
4,000
doesn't actually
now. Yeah,
release. Oh, what's that?
we do. Yeah, it's part of our what do you call that?
Okay.
The investment brief or whatever. So the numbers are out there, but yeah, I believe it's over
Yeah.
4,000 at this point. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. The other thing is that just to quickly touch on the NVIDIA thing just a little bit. So if you get a
Mm,
3090, there's something out
mm,
there called Search with RTX from NVIDIA. Have you heard of this? It's Windows only. So it's not
mhm,
necessarily like that friendly if you're on the Linux side, but it will allow you to run your own RAG stack locally on your
mm.
own documents. So imagine you've got like a
Okay.
folder full of PDFs or whatever, you do it.
Mhm,
Uh, I will say I pointed at my 60 terabyte NAS and it never ended. So maybe start with a smaller amount of files than larger.
mm.
I tried it with like a quick YouTube video. Essentially, what it does, it downloads the transcript and lets you ask it
Right.
questions. Pretty handy. Not great. I'd really rather give it my own
Yeah.
files, so I'm gonna try that out, probably this week. It's gonna take a while to index the docs that I have.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
basically it, and there's, like, a lot of network latency and things like that involved,
Right.
but it's pretty cool. They're using OnX. Have you heard of OnX before? It's an open
Oh
source
yeah.
neural network.
ONNX.
Mhm.
I've heard the name, but I have no idea what it is.
Yeah, so it ships with that neural network. It seems to be, like, the biggest payload, and then it's got, in terms of models, I think it's, Llama 2 and Mistral, which sorta makes sense. I
Mm,
mean, in terms of what you'd actually ship.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, I
wor
did
Worth a
see. I
try.
was listening to one of the podcasts I listen to. I think it's called either This Week in AI or Today in AI. I don't know. I think it's This Week.
I feel like
Um,
this is where I crib most of the notes from. This is from like the Today in AI newsletter. So you
yeah.
must not have read yesterday's because like these are
No, no,
notes from
no.
the
I
past.
think this is. I mean, this is a podcast, and I think it was
It
like,
is, yeah. It's actually super
yeah.
handy to keep abreast of the news.
Mm,
But yes, that is my source. Thank you for figuring that out.
okay. Well, they had a discussion about the newer Gemini stuff.
Right.
Google,
It's really
and
good.
one of the interesting things about that is this massive context size,
Right.
and then you can feed it all of the works of say
Shakespeare.
what's that Hunger Games author, or not Hunger Games, but the what was the I don't know, some that wizards, the story
Harry
about
Potter?
these like kid wizards. Harry Potter, thank you.
Kid Wizards. I love it.
Kid wizards, yeah.
Uh
Playing that
I,
stupid
I've
Quidditch game,
forgotten
yeah.
I've forgotten her name, sorry. Rollins? Rowling?
Rolling. Yeah,
Rowling? Rowling?
rolling. Anyway,
Was it?
so you could
Was
feed it all the works of, say, it's that something that
yeah.
size, and have it analyze, and maybe look for plot holes or
Mhm.
something like that. Yeah, except, or does that, for the fact that you can feed it all this information, does this mean that RAG goes away? Because you could feed it all the information.
I think this is
Um,
RAG
you know,
though, right?
huh?
Without the data, it's not RAG, and I think with the data, it is
Well,
RAG because it's gonna be doing embeddings in order to pull up the data, would it not?
so what they were saying was that the context window is so large that you can feed all this stuff all at once as part of the prompt. Here's all my stuff, analyze it, and come up with some
I see what
question.
you're
Now,
saying.
of course,
I see what you're saying. So this could be
sending
like a
all that
multi-step
data,
kinda thing. Yeah. I get you.
sending all that data all at once, that's going to take a long time to do. And so
Mhm.
hopefully, the benefit of RAG is that you've been trickling that in for a while, and then
Also
you can
true.
ask it the question.
Yeah.
So all the data is already there and it's pulling out the highlights. And then, um, one of the problems with any sort of like really simple RAG setup is that you're going to say do a search for, or, tell me about something, and it's going to look across. You don't, even if it had the biggest context size, you don't want all that stuff to go in there, because
That's right.
often the information, I think we talked about this before, the
Mhm.
information that's in your data set isn't all relevant, even though it uses
It's
the
not
same
novel.
words and
Yeah.
maybe this,
It's
it's just,
yeah.
it's not related. And
Yeah.
so you're going to get really bad answers if you just hand it this massive context. And so
Right.
that, I don't think RAG, I mean, if anything, RAG becomes even more important to get it right, to get
Right.
focused onto what is the actual question, what's the actual information that's going to make answer this question, and come up with an answer.
Yeah, so
I
I
think
I
it's
I stumbled on something recently called, I think it's like a maturity model for RAG. So there's naive RAG,
mm,
which is like all my brain understands, obviously. But then there's 2 other steps basically. So as you get more advanced and using different RAG stacks, you may do things filtering on the ingest of, let's say, your PDFs, and perhaps the word "the" doesn't
mm,
matter to me as much as it might
right.
to others. So you can start like dropping stuff out. So filtering on ingest, I think, is one of the key things. And the other that I noticed in sort of the intermediate steps is filtering on egress. So as you're putting answers out there, don't just throw the
mm,
answer at the user. Actually run it through something else prior to giving it to them to make
right.
sure that, like, one, are you actually enriching the data, or did you just pull from what you knew already? Or two, like,
Right.
are you over rotating on one or the other? So basically giving you dials to each area as tunables essentially for each step of the
Mm,
process. Because there are in some cases where you want more of the mix of your local data, like corporate data, for example. I'm pulling up SOPs, like standard operating procedures, which is something I did a
mhm,
lot of in my past life for like chemistry, that kind of stuff. And it's really
mhm,
important to know, like, if something got changed, I need to know exactly where in these documents it is. And it
right.
seems simple, but searching PDFs is one of those things that's still not like, it's not that easy to
Yeah.
do. And being able
No.
to find them in, it's that needle in the haystack problem, is that RAG is somehow better at finding needle in the haystack pieces of
Right.
text than others are. And that was a paper from, again, the same publication we were just talking about.
Mm,
But having skimmed it a little bit, that seems to be what's actually unique about this kind of way of doing things, is that you can
mhm,
find those unique things in the middle of a bunch of text
right.
pretty quickly. And I think the naive RAG stack doesn't really address that. And that's kind of what NVIDIA is
Right.
using. We do have
Right.
someone in the chat who's using it and says it's pretty good. Yeah.
Hmm,
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, and they had a follow-up question. Yes, you can give it a PDF. Uh, Text, I think you can point at, and the video. There's a link for YouTube. If you click the little thing to the right of it, it will download the SRT file, so the
Transcript.
subtitles. Yeah, and it'll go
Yeah.
through the SRT, which is the transcript. Possibly auto-generated, which can be problems too. I fed it an NHK video about Japanese culture, which I
Mm,
one, I know Japanese culture. Two, I've seen this video and it's inscrutable for people who don't.
yeah.
And three, I asked it a question about wabi sabi, which is difficult for most people to explain, and it did a remarkable job. So if you
Hmm,
ask ChatGPT what wabi sabi is, it will give you an answer that's okay. If you feed it, if you feed, in this case it was Gemini, like NHK videos, and then ask it the question, it's much better. And this is again having to do with like context and understanding culture, because they may explain it in a like an American culture kind of way, which is not what you want. You actually need this from like the view of somebody who's either lived in Japan or knows this pretty well. But these concepts are sort of alien in English, so it's difficult to
Right.
explain. I thought phenomenal. Like I was blown away.
And what is it?
Oh, sorry. Wabi sabi is
Because I was initially thinking, oh, it's that green stuff that is actually horseradish in most American restaurants.
I will give you sort of the sort of generic answer for wabi sabi, which is fine. So it's two things. So wabi is one, sabi is the other. The it's like so okay, I just pulled up one here that says it means attentive melancholy or the awareness of the transient nature of earthly things and corresponding pleasure in the things that bear the mark of this impermanence. Um, kind of inscrutable to like read those words together. Like there's a word salad. What the heck's going on? So an easy example, if you've ever seen a Japanese garden with like a piece of water flowing into a bowl and the bowl overflows and then it repeats. Wabi sabi might be the moss growing on the bowl or the thing that is part of the impermanence of the object that you've put in nature that is now being transformed and is more beautiful for it. It's very difficult to explain in English. And it's like a feeling of nature is primarily involved. So some sort of like reclaim nature or any thoughts about like things not lasting long or being destructible ultimately kind of evoke these feelings. Yeah, and I still bungled it. Matt doesn't look like he's convinced. Yeah, exactly. So
Great.
it's because I think one of the common questions is the reason I got here is because one of the common questions I will ask these models is why is the sky blue? And it's pretty common. You'll see it from a lot of people will test it that way. But it's one of those things that a normal human would actually have a hard time explaining because it's fairly complicated. And you can give a scientific answer,
Really
which is
scattering.
technically, yeah. I mean, it could be the technical answer. You know, or it could be made up like Matt, or it could be, yeah, who knows? Sorry, I went on for
I
a
mean,
bit of a
I asked
tirade
that
there,
question.
but
That's like my standard. That's my standard question for first time I open up a model. Why is the sky blue?
oh, okay, me too. All right, yeah, it's kind of like the hello
And
world. It
Rayleigh
feels like,
scattering.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or is it, are there no
Or is it
other?
some wabi sabi answer?
No, I mean it could be that the Earth is on top of a turtle, and there are many other turtles, and because the turtles are in the water, yes, the sky is blue. I don't know. It's very difficult.
Sure. That's it. Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of turtles all the way down, right?
Yes, I've
Okay.
not heard any. Is there like some meaning to it?
Yeah. So there's a creation myth specifically about all of the universe being on the back of a turtle. And the question was asked during a speech, like, okay, so if I believe that all of this exists on a turtle, then like what's under the turtle? And I think the speaker said it's turtles all the way down. Like basically, there's no way to solve your argument. The only explanation for what you're trying to tell me, which is nonsensical, is that it's just a continuation of turtles. Sorry, I believe that was the answer after the speaker said something like it's turtles all the way down. It's completely nonsensical. So you went from a creation myth to something that's no funny.
I feel like there's a scene in a movie. Of course, anytime I've brought up movies, I usually probably mix 5 different movies into one. But I feel like I've seen a movie with everything living on a turtle, and it was
Yeah,
like Time Bandits. But
I think it's called World Turtle. I had to look it up because I wasn't.
well,
World
then there was
Turtle.
the more recent kind of tech one that looked horrible, where they were like all living on tanks, and the tanks were traveling the world. When there, I was like, looked really, really stupid, and like these were like massive
This is right
tanks.
up my alley. Yeah, I need to see this. Having just read a book that was very similar
I
to
feel
this.
like it just came out maybe in the last
Ah,
year.
I have to
It
watch that.
looked so incredibly stupid.
I've read a novel about a caravan that travels over a planet all the time because it can't stop, and I was enamored with this story. So
I
yes, I
think
would
it's a
love to watch
movie.
this. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So sorry, I rambled a bit there, but yeah, did you have anything to check out? I feel like what
So
have you?
there are a couple things that I think you mentioned on previous episodes or
I
whatever
I
thing
I just
podcast.
know that, like, maybe it's proof of value or some sort of return on investment thing. I just know that you like Apple TV, and if there's a new series on Apple TV, you will at least try it, I think,
I will
because
try it. I
it's
will
like
try it.
sunk cost fallacy or something. Like, you feel like you've already put the money
So
in, so, like, it's value that you need to extract, right?
yeah, maybe it's the one. It's like one of the few subscriptions that we have continued to pay for.
Right.
Usually, when the subscription, get a subscription like Stars,
Yeah.
and like, okay, finish watching Outlander, and then get rid of it because there's
Yeah.
nothing else there.
Yeah.
Netflix, did a whole bunch of things at one for a while, get rid of it.
Yeah.
HBO, same thing. Game of Thrones done, great, get rid of it.
Goodbye. Yeah.
Um, and but Apple TV, there's always mostly good stuff coming out
Yeah.
there, and there's a lot of stuff that I still haven't even though I know I really like it, I haven't finished. Slow Horses, I still haven't finished. But it's great. But one of the ones that was mentioned pretty recently was Masters of the Air, I think,
Yeah, because
which
everybody was abuzz about this, and I thought you said you didn't
I
like it.
watched the first episode and it
Yeah.
was garbage. It was
Okay.
just like, I just do not care about these people. Um, and then we watched, like, okay, people are saying this is good. Let's watch the second episode. And I don't think Tony was into
Not
it after
not
the
not
second
me,
episode.
other people. Got it. Got it.
Yeah. And then and I kind of hooked and watched the third
Nice.
episode. And I don't know
Nice.
if we've gotten any further than that.
Okay.
And the other one that the same thing was on Prime, and that was Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Oh, yeah, 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 with the hip hop artist slash community actor. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I always forget his name.
Yeah,
Childish
I've never
Gambino
watched Community, but
slash, uh,
Glover, Dan,
Danny Glover?
Donald Glover or Danny Glover.
I
One's dad, one's son. Are they related? They're related, right?
What? No way! I didn't even make the connection. I know exactly what you're talking about. The buddy cop movie star? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't even
Yeah,
think of that. I
I
just said it by
assume they're
mistake.
related.
Oh.
Um, anyway, with him and someone else, and it based on the preview for it, I thought, well, that just looks stupid. I am not watching that. And I ended up watching an episode, and I'm like hooked. I'm
I
watching it, trying to finish. I'm halfway through what has to be I feel like is a super lame episode where they go to couples counseling, which just feels stupid. But and I can't even watch it.
Too close to home?
But well,
They
no,
do that in the movie
it's
too,
just
though.
weird.
They go to couples counseling in the movie.
Oh,
The
do
movie's
they? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
It was bad. I do really like his acting though, and I actually really like his hip hop.
Yeah.
And I will say, Orange County, if you've not watched it, I think that's the name of the show.
Hmm.
No, it's just called Atlanta. My apologies. His show called
Hmm.
Atlanta is
Hmm.
also phenomenal. It just
Hmm.
so talented. Very surprising because watching Community, I didn't really get that feel. Like there's comedy in it for sure. Apparently, he was just a writer before, and then he decided to start acting. But he's quite good. It's like, yeah, it really takes me back. So I'll need to
So
watch it.
have we established whether? Oh yeah, parents Donald Glover.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I did look that up. My bad.
We did
Yeah.
establish that. Okay, good.
Yes.
Wait. And so what else has he been in?
Atlanta. He was writer and starred. Community, writing and starred. Childish Gambino is the hip hop act. He's been in movies as well.
Oh, he was Lando Calrissian in Solo.
Yeah, yeah. Which, not the best, not the best role for him, I don't think.
Right.
But yeah, I think he did a good job. Lando's kind of detestable is the issue, and maybe I like this actor too much.
Right.
Maybe I'm conflicted about Lando and his role in the series, but yeah. When money is the most important thing in your life, I guess that's why I don't like Lando. My apologies. I've been watching True Detective, and you touched a nerve there in terms of subscriptions because normally I would go out and sign up for HBO Max and perhaps VPN to the US so that I could watch it on my Android TV. Or I'd go to Prime and sign up for HBO, or I go to Apple and do like there's no easy way to watch the show other than signing up for something called Crave in Canada. In fact, the easiest way to watch True Detective, the current season 4, is really good with Jodie Foster. Can't recommend it enough. only 6
Right.
episodes, you gotta buy it from Apple. So $20 for
Mm,
all the episodes, 24 if you buy them one at a time. Uh,
mm.
maple syrup dollars are a little bit cheaper in the US, but, like, not cheap. But a month of the
Right.
Crave, which is kind of the thing that rolls up HBO in Canada, is the same price. So I could either pay
Mm,
a month and then stream it, or I could just
right.
have it forever from Apple. Like,
Right.
I don't understand the math here, but it's an intensely, intensely good series. I can't
Mm,
recommend it enough. It's primarily at night in Alaska, so, like, imagine the sun's going down.
right.
Um, it deals with, Aboriginal issues in Alaska, which I thought were really well
Mm,
handled. It deals with the cop versus, society kinda aspect. It deals with
right.
pollution, and als
Mm,
it's just, like, there's so many different angles, on top of which, like, the
right.
mystery is quite good, and it's a little bit spooky at the same time because it's always night. It can't
Mm.
not for kids at all, but can't recommend this enough. Once the kids
Okay.
are in bed, watch this. The lang It's HBO, so language is, yeah, there's a lot of swearing, there's some gruesome scenes,
Mhm,
unfortunately not too much, and there's a lot of, like, politics, but yeah, it's really, really
mm.
good. Like, phenomenal, blew me away. Only 6 episodes. I like those short series. I find they hit a lot harder. It's like a really long
Oh,
movie.
well, somebody has, responded in the,
Oh, did I
chat
miss
that
something?
no, it's not his dad.
Oh, shoot. That's
They
not
are
his dad. Oh,
unrelated.
we're so wrong.
Wait,
I think how did I get that wrong?
I thought I thought we hold on, hold on. Let's,
We
like,
get
stop all
it. Stop the presses.
but I can't find anything on IMDb on Wikipedia, so I'm going to IMDb. What's his name? Danny Glover. Wait, Donald? Who are we talking
Yeah,
about?
it's
Donald
Donald.
Glover.
Donald Glover. It does say that the relative we should know about is Steven Glover. So,
Stephen Glover.
Chad's probably right.
Yeah.
This is why we employ real-time fact checkers and not the 2 people
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about generative AI. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Adventurelands. I apologize for misspeaking, but we both got that wrong after
Yeah.
Googling it somehow, so
Okay,
I feel like
so the only relative is Stephen Glover, who
yeah,
I
me
don't
either. What a good way to close the episode.
but he's
Back
also in Mr. and Mrs. Smith, right? Wasn't he one of the, uh, guys playing no, no, a different person. Nope. Okay.
Oh, we've cleared that up. Yeah, and another recommendation for Atlanta. Again, if
Yeah.
you like to see something that's there's a little bit of politics. As a Canadian, the politics in Atlanta are completely different than they are here. For me, it was an eye opener just to see like what race relations might be in Atlanta, how one might grow up, and like what your options are in Atlanta. So they talk a lot about the hip hop career and stuff like that. Totally recommend it. It's funny. The pacing is really good. The writing is phenomenal, and the dialogue is like godly. I don't know how they
Hmm,
got people to sound as if they're actually talking, but it's great. It's so
hmm.
good. I can't recommend it enough. It's long.
Wow.
The first season itself, I'd say watch. Second, third season, maybe not, but the first season was quite good.
Yeah. Yeah, the series that I got started with, and it just, like, seemed to go on, and I don't think I even got a quarter of the way through. I was like, "I
Mhm.
can't take any more of this." Was the, Three Body Problem, like, the Chinese version of it. I was like, I can't deal with this." And I think there's
Speaking
a
of
I don't know if
inscrutable, yeah.
the
The new one's
newer
on it.
one, the more English or the American one is available now. It's on Netflix, I think, or
Oh, is it? I just looked the other day. No, March 21st. Not yet.
okay.
Soon. Soon.
We did talk about AI.
Where have you been, Nerd for Love? That's all we talk about these days, unfortunately. Like whatever's
Yeah,
trending. That's how sad we are. But
yeah.
yes, AI is primarily what we talked about today. Shall we call it? I think we covered quite a bit there.
Yeah, I was there anything else that I got recently that, needs to be
Uh-uh.
said? I feel like I did get something. Oh, well, I'll be able to tell you something soon.
That's
Um,
awful. You gonna leave him on a cliffhanger? Come back next week
so,
to figure out what keyboard
so
Matt bought.
my mother has an iMac,
Okay.
and, it is not dying, but, in order to get in order for her to log into Chase,
Mhm.
Chase requires a certain version of Chrome, and
Oh,
that version of Chrome needs to have a certain version of the OS, and the OS is no longer supported on her
right.
machine because it's it runs fine. I mean, it runs totally fine for her use case, which is it's a 2012 iMac.
That's
Um,
Firefox doesn't work for it? That's weird.
so uh,
Because
yeah,
Firefox has
we
old
just
ported
ran
versions.
into
I'm not sure if you knew. Did you
hmm,
know this?
what's
Worth a
that?
try. Firefox builds versions of its browser for old releases.
Hmm,
I know this because I just that text problem that I was talking about. I did in fact
right.
boot into an older version and had to update my browsers just to like browse the web. Firefox,
Okay.
I think it's ESG is the term, but it will actually give you like a stable version for
Hmm.
old within reason operating systems, but it is
Right.
phenomenal because otherwise you can't browse the net, which is
Right.
surprisingly important on an old computer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was like, well, what's the cheapest iMac I can get? Or, I don't want to have to deal with getting a Mac Mini and a display.
Yeah.
What can I just get this? She doesn't need anything super fancy. And I went onto the Apple website
Mhm.
and man, this is all this stuff is a little bit more than I wanted to pay, but
Right.
is there anything bad? It was like, and so then I went into the refurbished because she doesn't need an M3.
Yeah.
So what's an M1 iMac gonna cost? And so I ended up finding the one of the refurbished ones,
Mhm.
um, and it's coming on Thursday, and actually because I used to work at Microsoft.
Mhm.
I still get the
You get an Apple discount?
alumni Microsoft alumni program. So you go into
Yeah.
this, and there's a employee purchase program for Apple, which is like, oh, this is gonna be amazing. You get nothing off. You get
Uh,
$20 off of Apple Care. That's it. Like
my
what
my
the?
partner used to work at a hospital also at a discount. I think it was like, I mean, it's free money, so take the free money, but
Yeah,
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 it's
yeah.
not
It's free
significant.
money. Yeah.
Someone in the chat said I was wrong. Again, that's twice this week. Actually, this is phenomenal. So it's not ESG, it's ESR. So we think it's extended
Sorry.
support release. I was trying to figure out what the ESG
Hmm.
meant, and I couldn't. So yes, thank you, Nerd for Love. That is correct. And yeah,
Isn't
I
that
love
the
buying those
chemical and
refurbished
salt?
things,
Oh,
man.
it's MSG.
MSG. Don't you feel great buying refurbished stuff? You're helping the environment.
No, I well, yeah. I mean,
You just want to save the
I
money.
often I often think of like anything that's like used books. I
Yep.
hate getting used books.
What?
Hate getting used books
Oh,
because
we
like they've already
could
been like
could
creased
not
up
be.
or
Yeah,
like they
we could not
smell.
be any more different.
No,
No, yeah, I know they smell. Yeah.
but but I saw a video pretty recently. Somebody had bought like a refurbished MacBook, and then
Mhm.
they also did the kind of refurbished MacBook from Amazon, and
Oh,
it was the one from Apple was like it was like a
it's
brand
pristine.
new device,
Yeah. Yeah.
and perfect, and has a great warranty. And
Right.
the one from Amazon was you turn it on, you plug it in, turn it on, and it's already like pops up with a hardware error, and dents and like just things aren't working. And so I thought, well, let's give this thing a shot. It's got a 14-day return policy, so if it's
Right.
really bad, we can ship it back and um, figure out another solution.
I like it. I've been looking at the refurbished, I think they're called Steam Decks. I keep wanting to say Stream Deck,
Hmm.
but the refurbished Steam Deck, because it
Hmm.
runs Arch Linux, has me very interested in a portable,
Hmm.
I don't know, 1280 by 800 display
Right.
running Arch Linux. Like there's a certain part of me that really wants to tinker with a video game console that runs Linux for better or for worse. We get a guest here.
What? What? Who? Is that the dog?
That is one dog, one of two. It's
Is
pretty
that the
rare.
new dog?
This is the older but relatively 2 years old dog.
Hmm. Okay.
Still new.
What's he looking at?
I would assume it's getting close to food time, so I would assume that he's waiting
Ah.
for the food.
Ooh.
Let's see.
I,
Look
I
at
in
this.
fact I gotta go because I so our dog uh a few months ago, like 6 months ago
Mhm.
or maybe even a year ago, she had to get some teeth pulled.
Oh,
And
okay.
then when that happened, they said, well, just to it's better if you like kind of soften the food, just add a little bit
I
water to
remember
the
that.
hard food,
Yeah.
and then it'll be softer. And ever since then, our dog does not like hard food. You have to pre-soak the food, let it sit for like 20 minutes, and then she'll.
Aw.
If you don't, and this has been the case forever, she would eat a few bites of it and then not touch it for like 24 hours. So like
Aw.
food would sit there for a day and a half before she finally ate it.
Aw.
Now, moistened after 20 minutes. You got to let it sit for
Yep.
20 minutes, which means you have to
Get
feed
set a
her
timer.
and then
Yeah.
feed her.
Yeah.
And she's like gobbles it up. It's gone within like
Awesome. Oh, that's so
about a
cool.
minute,
Yeah.
always. And so I started moistening it just before, as I was setting up this call, and it's been an
Gotcha.
hour, and she's
That's gonna be
probably
some
sitting there looking at this at the table like, where's my food?
Go feed your dog. All right, folks. Thank you
Go
very
feed my
much for
dog.
all the comments and the
Thank
corrections
you.
on factual
Yeah, thanks.
inaccuracy.
This has been
Please keep us
amazing.
honest.
The
It has
last
been amazing.
two or three have been incredible.
Fantastic. Thanks you very much, folks.
All right, let's look for the end stream button.